You have just installed Linux Mint and wonder what to do next? In this video, I will show you 15 things to do after installing Linux Mint. These 15 things will improve your system responsiveness, prevent some possible issues, make your system more secure, and optimize the usability of your system. Let's get started. Hello everyone, it's a rich Linux user, helping you to install, configure and use Linux. I have shown how to install Linux Mint in one of my previous videos. See the link in the description. Linux Mint is the most user-friendly Linux distribution, and everything is well configured by default. You can use it as it is, and you will be absolutely fine. However, if you make the changes I show in this video, you will get little better Linux experience. In my previous video I have touched upon the things to do after install, but in this video I provide an extensive list of things to do. See the timecodes in the description. And we start with the thing number 1, configure Update Manager. I have already shown how to configure the Update Manager in my Linux Mint installation guide for beginners. However, even if you have configured it, you can periodically go to the settings and check if you are still using the fastest mirror. Sometimes the rank of the servers can change. Open the Update Manager, go to the Edit menu and open Software Sources. Enter your password. In the mirror list, click on the main mirror. Then wait for some time until the servers are ranked and select the top one, which is the fastest. Do the same for the base mirror. In the Edit menu, you can also go to the Update policy and change it if you need. I recommend to update everything. The option Optimize Stability and Security should be fine too. Don't break my computer is too cautious. The choice is of course upon you. When you have configured everything, reload the Update Manager and install all the available updates. Install drivers. Go to the menu and search for Driver Manager. Open it. You probably will need to enter your password. Here you see all the available drivers. I recorded in a virtual machine, so I have VirtualBox drivers listed here. You may also see the drivers for a Wi-Fi card. If you need a proprietary driver for your Wi-Fi card, you would need to use a cable internet to update the system and install the driver. The new Wi-Fi connection should work. If you have a dedicated graphic card like Nvidia or AMD, you will see something similar to this. It offers us 3 options. Usually the recommended option works the best. If you experience some issues with your graphic performance, try to use the open source driver. If the open source driver doesn't work well either, try the third option. After you install the graphic driver, you can go to the graphic card settings and try to tweak it little. This may help to resolve some issues, if you have any. For example, when I had a laptop with an AMD graphic card, it was getting very hot. But when I adjusted the power management settings to save energy and reduce performance, the laptop stopped getting hot. So I recommend exploring the settings of your graphic card. I also have Microcode listed among the drivers. I'm not sure if it is always shown in the driver manager, so I separate it as the thing to do number 2. Install Microcode. If you see Microcode among offered drivers, install it. If not, open the Synaptic Package Manager and search for Microcode. You will see 2 options, AMD Microcode and Intel Microcode. You need to install one of these, depending on your processor. If you do not know what processor you use, open the menu and search for System Info. Open it and in the line Processor, you can find the name of your processor. I have Intel processor here, so I install Intel Microcode. Microcode is the firmware of your processor. It is recommended to install it for better performance and to receive the processor firmware updates. Decrease the swap use. Swap is the space on your hard drive that is used to store the data when there is no enough RAM. If you don't know, RAM is the random access memory. It's kind of temporary memory on your computer. When you open System Info, you see the size of your RAM in the line memory. I have 2 gigs RAM. RAM is always faster than a hard drive, so it is better to use it as much as possible. By default, if Linux Mint starts using more than 60% of the RAM, it writes some data to the hard drive, and the system becomes less responsive. You can check it if you open the terminal and type cat/pros/sys/vm /swappiness. Enter. You will see the value of 60. You can force the system to use as much RAM as possible and write to the disk only when more than 90% of the RAM is in use. To do that, type in the terminal sudo xadd/etc/systctl.conf. Scroll down the file and in the end add vm.swappiness = 10. Then save the file and exit. Reboot the system and check if changes took place. Now it shows 10, so the system will access your hard drive less frequently and it will be more responsive. Enable drive cache. Another option you can enable is to use the hard drive cache. Go to the menu and search for the disk application. Open it and make sure that the hard drive with your Linux Mint system is selected. Usually it is the one on the top. Open the menu and select Drive Settings. Go to the Write Cache tab and enable it. What does it do? Now your programs do not need to wait until the data is written to your hard drive. Normally, the program would wait until the data is written to the disk, and it would proceed to the next step only after the write event. Now the data will be cached and written to the disk with some delay, so the program will proceed to the next step without waiting for the write event to finish. However, there is some trade-off of this option. You can read it here, that if your system crashes or loses power, some data may be lost. I don't think you will lose a lot of data, and it is unlikely that Linux Mint will crash. But keep in mind and decide yourself if you want to take a risk and gain the performance boost. I've used this option and had zero problems. Reduce SSD writes. If you use an SSD drive, you can extend its lifespan by reducing the write cycles. It may not be necessary for the latest SSD, but it is advisable for older SSD. There are two things that are necessary for good performance of an SSD drive: trim to clean the drive and reduce the write cycles. Linux Mint already has trim enabled by default. You can check it if you run in the terminal cat/etc/cron.weekly/fstrim. You should see through here. The write to SSD cycles are not reduced by default. There are many ways to reduce the writes, but they are all very complicated to configure and maybe not worth your time. However, one option you can enable very easily. Type in the terminal sudo xadd/etc/fstab. Find your SSD partitions, usually it is every partition that has SDA in its name, and add no time before the word errors. You need to do it for every partition you have on your SSD drive. Save and close the file. No time will disable write actions when the system only reads the files. It is enabled in many distros by default, but not in Linux Mint. Probably because this option has a small risk that some programs will not work correctly. But I have been using it for years and had no problems whatsoever. Turn on the firewall. Linux Mint is already very secure, and activating a firewall is not necessary. However, I recommend you to do so. It doesn't use much of the system resources, but it will additionally secure your system. Open the menu and search for Firewall. Open it. The settings are very simple here, you just need to enable it. This should be fine for the most of the users. I think new users won't use anything where you need to open ports in your firewall. If you do need to do so, for example to use SSH to connect to your computer, you can go to the rules and change firewall settings for some applications. For SSH, you select SSH and enable both directions port, but this is an advanced level. Install Microsoft Fonts. Due to some licensing issues, Linux Mint doesn't include Microsoft Fonts by default, but likely you will need them, especially if you want to use your old documents created in MS Office. To install MS Fonts, open Software Center and search for MS Fonts and install it. Now, when you open any application, you will have such fonts as Arial, Times New Roman, and other MS fonts. Remove unnecessary software. It depends what software you need, but it is usually safe to remove Mono, Orca, and VirtualBox guest packages. Open Synaptic Package Manager and search for Mono Runtime Common. You can read here that Mono is a platform to run and develop some specific applications. I'm not sure about it, but I also read that it poses a security risk. So mark it for removal. Then search for GNOME Orca. It is an accessibility package. Unless you are visually handicapped, it is fine to remove it too. Then search for VirtualBox guests and remove all the installed packages, which have this mark in the S field. These packages needed to run Linux Mint in a VirtualBox, but if you are on a real hardware, remove them. I record this video in a VirtualBox, so I will keep them. And press apply. Linux Mint comes with many applications pre-installed, but from my experience many people never use half of them, so why to keep them? Go through the system menu and check if there is any application you are not going to use. Search for them in the Synaptic Package Manager and uninstall. But be careful, because when you remove some programs, they will drag some other programs as dependencies. You need to be a little familiar with Linux system to understand when you uninstall needed packages. For example, when we mark to remove Mono, we also mark to remove Tomboy, which is a sticky notes program. But it is okay, we will install Xpad instead, which is a good alternative. If you are a complete Linux beginner, do not remove anything what comes with Linux Mint by default. If you are a little familiar with Linux, I would recommend removing the programs you do not use. For example, I would suggest removing these programs. Simple Scan, you don't need it if you do not have a scanner. GIMP. GIMP is a good image editor, but there is some learning curve. For simple image editing, you can use Pix. Pix is very intuitive and does very simple things like image rotating, resizing, brightness and contrast settings, etc. Hexchat. I do not use it. Check it out, maybe you will need it, otherwise it is safe to uninstall it. If you do not use any messaging program, you can remove Pigeon. I know that many people prefer web clients. If you're one of them, you can also remove Thunderbird, which is an email client. If you do not download torrents, remove transmission. If you do not have an optical disk drive, most of the modern hardware doesn't have it. Well, we all use flash drives nowadays. Remove disk burning program Brazero. You can clean the system even more by removing some unused applications from the administration and preference section, but there is a danger to remove some required applications as dependencies, so I do not recommend doing so. For example, I do not have a Bluetooth, so I usually remove all Bluetooth related packages. But there is a danger. If you remove these two Bluetooth related libraries, they will drag the whole Cinnamon desktop, which is the graphical environment of your system. To uninstall Bluetooth, you need to uninstall all Bluetooth related packages except these two. So again, be very careful. If you are a beginner, do not uninstall anything what comes with the system by default. The gain is very small, but the risk you break the system is very high. You really need to know what you are doing. Change Firefox settings. When you open Firefox, the start page is the Linux Mint website. I prefer to open the last closed tabs when I start Firefox. To enable this feature, go to the menu, Preferences. In the field, when Firefox starts, select Show windows and tabs from the last time. Now when you close and open Firefox, you will see the tabs you had opened when you close the browser. Another thing, Firefox uses DuckDuckGo search service. It is good private search engine. It doesn't collect your search data. Try to use it for some time. If you like it, keep it. From my experience, DuckDuckGo doesn't always show the most relevant results. If you want, you can change the default search engine to Google or any other service. Click on this magnifying glass button and here you see Change Search Settings. Click on it, then click on Add more search engines. You can read all the justifications why Linux Mint uses DuckDuckGo and doesn't use Google. To add Google, you need to click on this Google icon. And now, when you click on the magnifying glass in the search bar, you will see an option to add Google. Click on it. Then go back to the search settings and select Google as a default engine. Now, when you do the search, you will see Google results. Tweak LibreOffice. There is one settings we can change to speed up LibreOffice. Open LibreOffice, go to Tools, Options, and in the Advanced, disable Use Java Runtime Environment. In the 99% of the cases, you will not need Java, but Java slows down LibreOffice. Now you disabled it, LibreOffice will be a little faster. If you are still unsatisfied with the speed of your LibreOffice, you can increase the speed by allocating little more memory in the memory settings. I use 64 in use for LibreOffice and memory per object 12. You can also try to increase it even further. LibreOffice should start up much faster now. Remove some applets. I never use the user applet and window quick list. The information from the user applet is available in the main menu. The window quick list duplicates the main window list on the panel. So let's remove them. Right-click on the panel and open Add Applets to the panel. And remove the user applet and Windows quick list. Turn off some startup applications. Open the system settings and go to the startup applications. You may have some applications here which you didn't want to auto-start, so disable them. In my case, I have only Ctrl-Alt-Backspace shortcut and Mint Update Manager enabled. This is okay. If you have Mint Welcome and Mint Upload enabled, you probably need to disable them. NVIDIA Prime support will probably be disabled unless you use NVIDIA Optimus graphic card. If you have any other programs here which you didn't enable purposefully, disable their auto-start. Disable Hibernation. When you hibernate your system, all the open programs do not shut down, they are written to the hard drive. So next time you turn on your computer, it restores the previous state of the system with all the programs open. This feature hasn't worked correctly in Linux for a long time. Now, in most of the cases, it works quite well, but it still fails from time to time. You can use it, but I do not recommend doing so. Linux boots very fast, and there is very small benefit of using Hibernation. Besides, Hibernation is not advisable if you use SSD. To disable Hibernation, open the terminal and type the following command. I leave it in the description. Enter your password. You need to type it blindly, nothing shows in the terminal when you type. So after that, press enter. And the Hibernation option should disappear from the shutdown menu. If you're on a laptop, go to the power settings and check if you had Hibernation in any of the options. Replace it with shutdown or suspend. We moved the settings to enable Hibernation to the root of the system. So if you need to undo this action, you need to move the settings back. I'll leave the undo command in the description of this video. Disable the switch user option. When you click Log Out in the menu, you will see the option Switch User. If you use it, you will be able to log in as another user, but everything will stay open and working for a current user. This is an efficient use of memory and resources. It is better to disable it. Open Synaptic Package Manager and install dconf editor. Open dconf editor from the menu, go to org, cinnamon, desktop, lockdown, and tick disable user switching. Close dconfig editor. Try to open the logout window. Switch user isn't there anymore. I hope after these steps your Linux Mint system will work even better. Give a like to this video if it was useful, leave a comment if you have any suggestions. Of course, make sure to subscribe, and thank you for watching.